The sons of men are members of a whole. A story from Saadi's Gulistan. Hello everyone, welcome to Persian Stories. Today we are going somewhere different, not to the mystical halls of Rumi, but to the rose gardens of Shiraz, where one of the greatest storytellers who ever lived walked, watched and wrote. We are talking about Saadi, Sheikh Mosleh ad-Din Saadi Shirazi, a 13th century Persian poet and traveler. Thinkers like Emerson and Goethe were deeply influenced by him. If Rumi takes you to the sky, Saadi brings you back down to earth. His two masterpieces, the Gulistan and the Bustan, are among the most widely read books in all of Persian literature. Kings kept them on their desks. Scholars memorized them by heart, and a few lines Saadi wrote ended up on a magnificent carpet installed at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. Today, we'll find out why. Part 1. The Hall Where History Held Its Breath. New York, 1948. The great chamber of the newly formed United Nations still smells of fresh paint and old grief. 3 years after the war ended, the rubble is still warm across a dozen countries. The delegates seated around the table carry that weight in their eyes, the particular heaviness of people who have witnessed what human beings are capable of doing to one another. The agenda is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. 6 simple words, the most complicated project in human history. When the turn comes to the Iranian representative, a quiet man in his 50s named Dr. Farzan, something shifts in the room. He doesn't stand immediately. He looks around slowly, as though reading each face. And then he begins, not with statistics or legislation, but with a story. He speaks of a king who fell gravely ill. The court physicians arrive at a desperate diagnosis. The only cure requires harvesting a vital organ from a healthy young boy. A boy is found. His parents, poor, broken by poverty, accept payment and surrender their son. The judge signs the warrant. The executioner sharpens his blade. But when the soldiers come for the boy, he does not weep. He does not beg. He looks up at the sky with the terrifying calm of someone who has just understood something the world hasn't yet caught up to. The king, unsettled, leans forward. Why do you not cry out? Your life is about to end. The boy answers with words that land in the room like stones dropped into still water. When a child is wronged, he runs to his father and mother. When a man is wronged, he runs to the judge. When justice fails, he runs to the king. But my father and mother have sold me. The judge has condemned me, and the king calls my death a cure. I have no one left except God. The king's hand drops. The warrant goes unsigned. The boy walks free. And the king, having surrendered the cruelest instrument of his own power, heals. Dr. Farzan pauses. Then he recites, in Persian first, because some truths must be spoken in the language they were born in, and then in translation. The children of Adam are members of one body, created from the same essence at birth. When fate brings suffering to any one member, the others cannot rest in peace. You who remain indifferent to the pain of others, you do not deserve to be called human. The room goes still. Then applause begins. But before it can build into something comfortable, the kind of applause that lets people feel moved without being changed, Dr. Farzan raises one hand. "Do not applaud yet," he says quietly. "Saadi did not write this poem for your applause. He wrote it for your conscience." He draws on the whiteboard. Not a map, not a chart. A human body. Simple, like something a child might sketch. He labels the head, the hands, the feet, the heart. Then he draws small red lines radiating from one limb to another. "This," he says, "is the world." He points to the hand. "This is the nation at war." He moves to the foot. "This is the famine no one is covering." He places his finger at the center of the chest. "And this is where your silence lives." He turns to face the room. 3 people failed that boy before God could intervene. His parents, the judge, the king. Each had a reason. The parents needed money. The judge needed to uphold order. The king needed to survive. Not one of them paused to ask, "If I sign this warrant today, what kind of world am I building for tomorrow?" He walks back to his seat. A body that ignores pain in one of its members does not remain healthy for long. The infection spreads, and one day, the part that believed itself safe discovers that it never was. Part 2. The Symbols and Their Meaning. 3 symbols hold this story, and each one opens a different door into Saadi's moral universe. The boy represents every silenced innocent throughout history, any human being abandoned by every institution built to protect them. Saadi strips him of all earthly recourse. He cannot appeal to family, law, or state. This forces a question. What does your civilization become when every safeguard fails at once? The boy's calm is not resignation. It is a mirror held up to everyone who still has the power to act and hasn't. The 3 enablers, the parents, the judge, the king, represent the architecture of complicity. Saadi understood something that took modern psychology centuries to name. Evil rarely announces itself with fanfare. It arrives wearing the costume of necessity and legal language. Each of the 3 had a reason. None of them were monsters. That is precisely Saadi's point. The most catastrophic injustices in history were committed by ordinary people who decided, one quiet moment at a time, that someone else's suffering was not their problem. The body represents the absolute indivisibility of human dignity. Saadi's metaphor is not poetic decoration. It is a precise moral argument. In a body, no organ can afford indifference to another. Your lungs do not have the luxury of not caring about your heart. And you do not have the luxury of not caring about the person being broken beside you. Part 3. The Lesson That Cannot Be Unlearned. Here is what Saadi understood 7 centuries ago that we are still struggling to accept today. Silence is not neutrality. When we stay quiet in the face of injustice, when we look away, when we accept the coin and hand over the boy, we do not stay safe. We become part of the machine. And machines do not make exceptions for their operators. A system that permits cruelty against the vulnerable does not suddenly develop a conscience when it reaches the powerful. It escalates, it normalizes, And one day, the same logic that justified sacrificing one boy will justify sacrificing a community, a people, a nation. And then, the very architects of that system will find themselves standing exactly where the boy once stood, with no one left to call for help. Saadi's poem is not a call to sentiment. It is a warning, written in the language of the body. You cannot amputate your own limbs and walk away whole. The suffering we refuse to witness does not disappear. It compounds. And when it returns for everyone. What Saadi asks of us, what that boy's calm eyes asked of the king, is not heroism. It is simply this: see. Do not look away. Understand that the pain in the body's farthest limb is already traveling toward the heart. Because a world that learns to ignore the cry of one boy does not build a civilization. It builds a countdown. And Saadi, standing 7 centuries in the past, is already watching the clock. Thanks for watching Persian Stories. If this episode spoke to you, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. See you next week. Take care of yourselves.